Sometimes the best man for a job is a woman. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Agent Carter. Hello and welcome back to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy fact, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And today we have a bonus episode for the end of the Rerun Summer. You thought the Rerun Summer was over, but we have one more episode. You might call it a post-credit episode.
There we go. Very appropriate. Yeah, I mean, this is mostly at my insistence because I figured if we're doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there's no way I can get away, without also doing Agent Carter.
Yes, this week we are covering a couple episodes of Marvel's Agent Carter, starring Hayley Atwell. And I take it you have seen this entire show because it's only 2 seasons.
It is only 2 seasons, and yes, I saw the entire show as well as they call them Marvel one-shots back in the day on the Blu-rays where they'd have like a little short film. I think there was a few with Coulson, and there was this one, which is I think on the Iron Man 3 Blu-ray, but is also available on Disney Plus, as is this whole series.
Yeah, as is everything. So I remember when it first came out, I had no interest in it because Agent Carter's fine. As you may recall, for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, I said, why would I watch a Marvel superhero show that has no superheroes in it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I barely was interested in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but then when they made another TV show, there was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again, but in the past, then I definitely had no interest in it.
Ooh. I mean, look, I love Marvel and I love superheroes, but I also like characters. And although this is not a USA show, characters welcome. This, Agent Carter or Peggy Carter as a character in that first Avengers movie, or the first Avenger rather, really caught my attention, and I thought she was such a great character. So, and then when they made the one shot about her, I was like, wow, this is great. I would watch a whole show about this. And so when they made it, I was like, yes, I'm going to definitely watch this.
Sometimes it's nice to get what you want.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now that we've covered sort of our background with this show, why don't we jump into it?
All right, so we're going to begin with the pilot, which has a name this time.
Which is called Now Is Not Pilot. It's not really a pilot. It's more of just episode 1, because I think at least the first season got a direct-to-series order, because they were sort of already had a pilot in the form of the Agent Carter one-shot.
Yeah, a lot of these streaming service now shows, they don't do pilots because, it's the whole show at once. That being said, this is certainly the beginning, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
So it is called Now Is Not the End, and the synopsis is, in 1946, Peggy Carter is now a secretary for the Strategic Scientific Reserve. Howard Stark asks her for help when the country believes that he is selling deadly weapons to their enemies.
All right, so we start off with a flashback to the end of Captain America, the First Avenger, the scene where Peggy and Cap are talking over the radio as Cap's about to put it into the water.
I like when he says, I'm going to put her in, or something like that. Maybe he doesn't phrase it like that, but you know what I mean.
Oh, Zach.
No, I think he says something like, I'm going to put it down in the water, which I thought was a cool line.
Okay, just...
I'm going to put it in her.
Oh, no. Just stop, Zach. So Peggy is thinking about that moment as she's making a cup of tea. We find out this is New York City, 1946. She's reading about Howard Stark in the newspapers. He's got some scandals going around about selling weapons.
And it's Dominic Cooper. I was like, oh, right. That's great.
And then we get sort of a montage of clips from the First Avenger, mostly of her just like fighting, juxtaposed with her, putting up her Murphy bed, ironing her clothes and everything else. Mm-hmm. And as she's about to put up the Murphy bed, her roommate, Colleen, comes in, who's dead tired. She says that more GIs are coming back, so women are being let go from their jobs. It sounds like she's a riveter.
Yes, I think that's exactly correct. So yeah, I really like this part because it's like a real history. Like, the GIs are coming home. It's all very realistic. I really like that. But also I like this dynamic where she works at night. So she comes home and sleeps in the bed. And then Agent Carter works during the day, so they're like swapping out.
It's like people on a ship, they'll have their roommates who they never see because they're on exact opposite shifts. Like on lower decks, don't they have that, the rivalry between Beta and Delta shift?
Yeah, but I don't think in the Navy. I know people in the Navy, they call it hot bunking.
That's yeah.
Where they literally sleep in the same bed.
Yeah.
And they swap back and forth. Also, this reminded me, so longtime viewers may remember Christian posted a video of him talking to Hayley Atwell about working with Tom Cruise. But in that same panel, somebody said that Agent Carter is a bicon. And if you don't know what a bicon is, neither did Hayley Atwell. So you're in good company.
Okay, I don't remember this, but
it's a bi icon. Oh, it may have been before you got there.
No, yes. I remember that. That's right.
Apparently, Agent Carter is a bi icon, and that made me wonder if like her and her roommate are more than just roommates. There's no evidence for that in the episode itself.
What I will say is that the character who people usually ship her with, is a character we'll meet later in this episode. Although we don't get too much interaction.
Is it Bridget Regan?
No, it's Lindy Funneska, or whatever her last name is, character Angie. Okay. But we'll get to her. Let's get moving.
Yeah, this scene is a total bitch tell test fail, for the record, because they just talk about men. Yeah.
No, they talk about. Well, I guess no. Let's see. It's. All right. Didn't think about that.
Her roommate says something like, "I found a guy, and you should find a guy too, Peggy." Right?
No, well, she says that she hasn't been that Peggy hasn't been on any dates, so it's not necessarily about a specific guy, but about dating. It's down the line there. Yeah. All right. So we also find out that Peggy's cover is at the phone company, which I think is cool. So we see her going to work. Peggy is a bright splash of color in a crowd of gray suited men.
Yes, with her Carmen Sandiego hat and her blue coat. Which is
I
on
like
all the
that
posters.
Hat. I like that hat a lot. So she goes into work at the phone company. As she's walking through past the switchboard girls, the last one activates a secret elevator for her, and this is all a cover for the SSR, or the Strategic Scientific Reserve.
Yeah, this is basically the same as that part in Alias where she goes to work.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like poetry or rhymes.
So once she gets there, as she's getting settled, an alarm goes off. It's a high priority case. Her boss tells her to cover the phones. She instead has the phones routed to the briefing room so she can also actually attend the meeting. And when they get to the briefing, we get a newsreel about Howard Stark, which I like this. He's accused of selling weapons to the enemy. They're not specific as to which enemy this is.
Yeah, I think you can put 2 and 2 together, though, right?
I mean, later on, yes, but right at this moment, not. It could be any number of enemies. So there 6 pieces of his tech have shown up on the black market, and so he's been testifying on the Hill, but didn't show up for the last day of testimony. So now he's a fugitive from justice.
Yeah, this is like Bruce Wayne Murderer, that comic book arc.
I do like
always
that
nice to see Dominic Cooper again. And also, there's a part. Is this the part where he's testifying in front of Congress?
Yeah.
So somebody asked him, like, "Did you?"
Oh yes. Did you knowingly? Did you knowingly give your weapons to the enemies of the United States? No. Did you unknowingly? And he says something to the effect of, "Well, by definition, that would be." Yeah, I forget what the line is. Yeah.
He says something like, if it was unknowingly, how would I know about it? And I don't want to claim to be smarter than Howard Stark, but very obviously, he could have sold weapons unknowingly and then found out about it later. I mean, come on. Whatever.
Yeah, so one of the other agents, Agent Thompson, is made the lead. And Peggy, at this point, speaks up and says that she, worked closely with Howard during the war and can't believe that she was a traitor. And of course, at this point, her boss and a bunch of the other people belittle her actions during the war. And another agent, Agent Sousa, tries to stand up for her, ironically enough, because he has a crutch.
Yes, he's missing a leg. Yeah. He's not just. He didn't get hurt playing soccer.
No, he got injured during the war. afterwards, she talks to him. He's trying to say, don't worry about it. I got your back. But she says, I wish you hadn't tried to stand up for me because I'm more than capable of handling what they throw at me.
Yeah, I guess you could call what he did white knighting. Would you say that's fair to say?
I don't know necessarily, but maybe.
Yeah, white knighting is usually a bit more extreme than that.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. Actually, I will push back on that. Say, no, I don't believe that is necessarily
uh-huh.
that.
Though
I mean,
I
he's just
like
real. I
how
think he's just trying to be a decent guy.
yes, that's true. That's true. So yeah, I think when people say white knighting, it's usually more pejorative, which was not how I felt. So I like this part. There's a real you get the impression that Agent Carter has a loss of purpose, even though she's doing what she wants to do, which is work in the intel world. She still has a loss of purpose, which I'm sure is very common for people coming back from a war or similar situations. Like I'm sure you probably heard when that Neil Armstrong movie came out with Ryan Gosling as him,
Right.
how once he goes to the moon and comes back, it's like, what are you going to do now? Nothing what you do will ever compare to going to the moon for the first time.
Right. So after the meeting, Thompson gives her some surveillance reports to file because he's going to be too busy, working on this case, and she's better at that sort of stuff anyways.
Yeah, so you get the impression of what her life is.
So we next go to the L&L Automat, where the waitress, who's Angie, sees Peggy looking at a newspaper with Cap's photo. She makes a comment how she saw Cap at a USO performance one time.
Yeah, I like how they don't overdo too much of the Cap references, that there is kind of a lot, but it makes sense given how public of a figure he is, especially compared to all the other superheroes, except maybe for Iron Man.
Yeah, and at this point, he is the only one that really people have known. But yeah, so Angie can tell that Peggy's upset, and this is where Peggy, talks about, again, like you were saying, how she has that sort of loss of purpose after the war. And as she goes up, I think she gets a piece of food from the automat. Peggy gets a note on a napkin that says to meet in the alley in 5 minutes. So she looks around.
Is the waitress here the bi?
Yeah, the one
the
that
one that they think she's bi
Peggy
with?
gets shipped with a lot, we'll say. Yeah.
I see. All right.
Yeah, Peggy decides, I'm going to take a chance and actually see what's going on in the alley. So as she gets outside, a man steps out of the shadow, says that she's coming with him. She knocks
this is like
the guy
ridiculous.
out. Yeah.
It's absurd. Like, he would never have done that if they didn't need him to do that for the story. It doesn't fit his character. Stark would not make him. Stark's smart enough to know how Peggy would react, unless it was like a test or something to see if she still got the moves.
He was excited to be part of this sort of spy world, so he decided, I'm going to play it up, and then quickly realizes that was the wrong thing to do.
He got a little too enthusiastic. That sounds like the kind of thing he would do.
It does seem like in character. So yeah, he gets knocked out, and then Peggy gets chased by a car, and she shoots at the car, which causes it to crash. And it's actually Howard Stark is driving the car, and the guy who was popping out of the shadows was his butler, Edwin Jarvis,
who looks exactly like Vision. Don't worry about it. It actually makes sense if you've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Or wait, or does it?
No. Well,
I suppose not.
In a way,
Tony would make an android that looks like his father's butler, not his own butler, his father's butler,
who probably raised him more than his father did.
Yeah, it's funny with World War II characters who have origins in World War II, like Magneto. The further we get from World War II, the less sense they make. Like if Jarvis really raised Tony Stark, that would be in like the 70s. Actually, maybe the timeline works.
That works.
Robert Downey Jr. is in his 50s.
Yeah, it does work. Well, I mean, it had to make sense in some way because he names his entire AI after Jarvis.
Yeah, I guess so. It's funny. Also, I think she shoots out one of the tires of the car, which is what causes
Well, when I watched it, I thought she shot the engine block, but then we see them driving away later, so she clearly did not.
I guess she didn't damage the car. Yeah.
she just shot at the car and then, yeah. Anyway, so as she gets in the car with Howard and Jarvis. Howard says he's being framed. He says he had a vault with what he called his bad babies, which were inventions that were too dangerous to sell. And
But
someone broke into his
apparently,
vault.
it's like,
What?
why doesn't he just destroy them then if they're too dangerous and not even he can be allowed to have them?
I don't
Come
know.
on, Howard Stark.
But someone broke into his vault and started selling them on the black market. And so he says he needs someone he can trust, someone inside the SSR.
Yeah, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
I totally buy it. Because his operation seems to be reduced to just him and Jarvis.
Well, I mean, as opposed to what? Like, oh, you mean just all of his...
Yeah, all of his employees, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but all of them would be under suspicion because of his, being a fugitive.
Yeah, well, just the fact that he's a wanted criminal means that there's very few people he can actually rely on.
Yeah.
So it works.
So they drive to some docks, and Howard states that he's heading overseas to track down some of his bad babies, which have popped up. But a bunch of them are seemingly still in New York somewhere. And he says that word on the street is that one of them is hitting the market soon. It's a formula for molecular nitramine, which is basically a handful of it would level a city block.
Mm-hmm.
And Howard leaves his butler, Jarvis, to help Peggy. So he gives him, Jarvis gives Peggy his card, says call anytime before 9.
Yeah, I like the whole wife thing. That's a recurring motif. So when was the last time we were at an auction in one of these movies? Was it Hudson Hawk? Or was there something more recent?
I think that was the last one. Why?
Just curious. It feels like it pops up a lot.
An auction?
Yeah.
There's no
the bad guys are auctioning something dangerous and we have to stop them.
Oh. Well, they're not an auction. This is not an auction. This is more of like a deal.
Yeah. Well, I have a note, it has to stop the auction, so maybe I misunderstood. But there's also in Casino Royale, right? The original Casino Royale, they had all the army guys.
Don't remind me. Anyway, so the next day, Peggy goes into the office. Apparently, Sousa's been there all night. He's been looking at pictures from the Stark case, including one of Howard on a boat with a woman, at which point, to sort of throw him off the trail, Peggy says that Stark is deathly afraid of water and makes a comment about how Stark tried to kiss her on VE Day and she knocked him into, was it the Hudson or the Thames? I don't remember, wherever they were.
Yeah, that sounds funny. I would have loved to have seen that, but apparently they couldn't afford Dominic Cooper for the whole episode.
Yeah, and also that was pretty much a lie because she's just making up a story to sell that story.
Yes, which reminds me, I wanted to talk about that. In the earlier scene, he's like, I need you to lie for me. So he's effectively asking her to betray her country, or at least her organization, which I thought was very interesting character stuff. Where it's like loyalty to your friend and the truth versus loyalty in this other way.
And also, I think he's probably playing off the fact that they don't value her there. And so that if she wants to be useful, she can be useful finding out what's really going on.
Yeah, he kind of knows how to push her buttons. Yep. Not that it's very hard to do. She kind of wears her heart on the sleeve a little bit for a spy.
Thompson is having a briefing over in one of the rooms, and Peggy brings in some coffee into the conference room so she can hear details.
It's really demeaning seeing her bring in coffee in like that.
But she uses that to her advantage because she can actually eavesdrop on what's going on. And
apparently SSR knows exactly where the auction or whatever it is, which is nice.
Just the guy is we find out basically there's a middleman who's it's more of that, as someone's a middleman who's connecting a buyer and a seller.
Right.
So we find out it's going to be in a fancy club, the Martinique. Peggy sees a photo of the middleman, whose name is Raymond, Spider Raymond. Yeah,
he looked really familiar. Do you know where he was from?
I don't know. He does look very familiar, though.
He's got one of those faces.
So she requests a sick day. She says she has a headache and other things. ladies
No,
things.
it's ladies things, which I thought was great. Is perfect.
And all the
We've
guys
seen
like,
that
oh,
reaction
what?
a lot. Yeah, they just can't
uh,
handle it.
and I like how her boss, Chief Dooley, is like, go take yourself shopping or whatever.
But
It's
yeah,
like that's
also very
that's what he
demeaning.
thinks that women do when they're having a menstrual cycle and need to do something. They go shop. No. uh,
He's like, change the subject, change the
yeah, yeah.
subject.
We go to the Martinique, which is the fancy club where Spider Raymond is talking to his seller, whose name is Brannis.
Yeah, that's
Raymond
Bubbles
wants
from The Wire.
oh. Raymond wants to know what else he has from Stark, but Brannis is just silent. So, Raymond says, "All right, here's the money," and Brannis leaves. At which point we see Peggy arriving at the Martinique in a white dress and wearing a blonde wig. There's a jazz band playing, and a guy tries to hit on her, and she, declines in an American accent, a very good American accent.
Yeah, she's an actor.
Yeah.
Also, the disguise reminded me of Alias, especially because it's so sexy. It's not just any disguise; it's like a sexy lady disguise. Come
Or
on, you
it's
know I'm
fitting
right.
in. Okay, it's fitting into a jazz club.
Okay, however you want to describe it.
All right. Anyway, so she sees a bunch of people going up to see Raymond, and very expertly ducks away from a photo so that they don't get her face.
Just like James Bond did in Doctor No with his hat.
Yeah. She
Yeah,
gets past the guard by saying that she has something to sell to Spider Raymond. And before she goes into the room, she goes up to a mirror and pulls out some lipstick, which says on it "Sweet Dreams." And she
yeah,
puts the lipstick on and goes in to see Raymond. She says that she knows that he has a particular formula and has some friends who'd be very interested in buying it. And he says, no, I'm sorry, it's not for sale. And she's basically trying to get, more intel out of him by being very seductive. But then he prematurely kisses her and gets knocked out prematurely.
yeah. My note here is that the seduction works a little too well.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah, so the lipstick was like a knockout lipstick.
right, just like it said it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't a misleading label.
But he's out before she could actually get any real intel. So Peggy uses her watch, which is actually a gadget watch, to break into the vault, in which she finds a glowing orb.
Yeah, she finds the holy hand grenade.
Yeah. So she was looking for a parchment with, or a piece of paper with the formula, but instead finds an actual working device. So she
Yes.
calls up Jarvis, says that they've weaponized the formula, and apparently Howard left a note. An orange glow means it's at peak volatility, and you have to render it inert with a sodium, hydrogen carbonate, and acetate formula.
Which is great. It's better than just like push a button or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. And apparently you've got to avoid touching the core to the containment ring, otherwise it'll, go off.
Yeah, there's some exchange where it's like, if I touch the core, it'll kill me. And they were like, well, it'll go off. So, yes. But it
Mhm.
will, not just you, like, presumably everybody else in the
500
vicinity
yards, yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so we see Agent Thompson and his team arrive at the Martinique. Peggy is trying to leave discreetly, but gets caught by a guard and uses a stapler to knock him out. I like this fight scene. That was like the use of just the stapler as like I don't know, as a weapon was interesting.
Yeah. Especially now that we have this trope of like small women beating up giant stun guys with just their fists. Having a stapler or whatever helps close that gap.
And as she's leaving, she passes by a very suspicious looking guy in the hall. And as she sees Thompson and his men approaching, she grabs that same guy who tried to hit on her before to dance, to use him as a distraction.
Yeah, hit on her. All he wanted was a dance to
I
start
mean,
with.
he did hit on her.
Yes.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just he hit on her.
Right. Let's tell it like it is.
Yeah. And she declined earlier, but now she needs a distraction, so it says, "Okay, sure, let's dance." So Spider Raymond wakes up and sees that the vault is empty. We find out that the very suspicious-looking guy was his buyer and shoots him in the head.
Yep. I like that. Sorry, Bubbles.
And Peggy leaves as soon as Thompson goes up the stairs, and Thompson finds the body of Spider Railman and has all the exits sealed. But Peggy was able to get out before then.
Yeah, around here, I had the prediction: is her roommate gonna die? Because I think they find some incriminating evidence, where they were like, it's a blonde woman, and her roommate's blonde. So I kind of put two and two together.
All right. So Peggy gets back home. Colleen apparently was sent home with the fever. So, and like right before she sees Colleen, she quickly stashes her wig. The roommate goes back to sleep. And Peggy grabs all the things needed to defuse the weapon.
She just has that chemical stuff.
I mean, all right. So so acetate. That's I think that's similar part of acetone to take off nail polish. So there's that. Sodium hydrogen carbonate. Let's bicarbonate is in like what's that? So sodium bicarbonate. That's something.
This would have been a good opportunity for like a Bill Nye the Science Guy thing. So you'd be like, sodium carbonate sounds really foreign, but actually it's in table salt, and then it holds up the table
sodium
salt.
bicarbonate is like baking soda.
Even better.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know. And listeners, if you actually know how to make a hydrogen sodium bicarbonate solution, let us know.
Well, yeah, like I assume that the scene was cut because it is, for television and you got to move things along. But it would have been kind of cool if Jarvis was like, okay, you need to do a blah, 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 sodium bicarbonate, whatever. And Agent Carter was like, I can't do that now. And he says, don't worry, you can do it with common household items. She says, but I'm in the middle of a gunfight.
I like it better that she already knows how to do it. It makes her seem smarter.
Well, then you have her say, okay, I could do that with normal household items, but I can't do it in the middle of a jazz club.
Well, she already does say, like, he makes a comment of, I'm not sure where you're going to find that at this hour. And she says, I'll find a way. And that's all I need. I don't need that. Well, that happened. Mm-hmm. It's in the show. I don't need to have her with, really extraneous dialogue saying that. We see her do it. We don't need anything more than that.
I guess what I'm saying is that when she says, I'll find a way, and it turns out her way is walk into her bathroom and grab a couple things off the sink. I was expecting a little bit more than that. That's all.
Do you really need it though? Why is it needed? It's not. It's not needed. We see it. We see her grabbing things. That's all we need. We don't need to pad this out. This is it. I think we're shown as much. Yeah, we're shown as much as we need to figure out what's going on. We don't. If you don't need it, that's just extraneous stuff that just could have been cut. So.
That's fair. My last word on the subject is I was just surprised that it was disarmed so easily. Or rather, finding this stuff was done so easily. Disarming it's another story.
Yeah. But yeah, so she very carefully lifts, the weapon out of its containment ring. And I like here, so she uses, it shows an ingenuity on her part that she figures out how to do it. And also figures out, all right, shouldn't just dunk it in the thing. I'm going to, put it in a perfume bottle and spritz it to diffuse it, which I thought because you don't know what sort of dosage that you needed on it, or at least we weren't told. So I like that.
In a lazier show, they would have had her just like pour it on it or something else equally direct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so you see the glowing stop and it's rendered inert, and then as she is settling down, after diffusing it, she hears a noise in the room and finds Colleen shot between the eyes. And in the mirror, she sees the guy right behind her. She fights him off as they're fighting, which, this is a very good fight scene. I like this. Hayley Atwell does really well in these fights. She sees that the guy has a very odd looking scar. It looks almost like a Y on his neck.
Yep. Well, she recognizes it. That was there before. Or was it?
No,
is this the first time you see it?
Okay. This is the first time she's seen it. Yeah.
All right.
And, as she's fighting, she ends up throwing him out of the window.
Yeah. Do they ever explain how he found them? Do you remember?
No. Well, we see the guy see her and follows her.
Oh,
so that's it.
That's a pretty easy explanation then.
Yeah. Back in the next day in the automat, Peggy and Jarvis are back to back in adjoining booths. I like this. Their method of not showing that they're in contact, but still being next to each other and able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the murder in the apartment can't be traced back to Peggy because her name wasn't on the lease. Colleen also had no family, so there's also no one, sadly enough, to look after anything that happened to her.
Yeah, I like Agent Carter's survivor's guilt at this part.
Yeah.
Doesn't she say something like, we lost people in the war, but this is different?
Maybe.
If I were writing it, she would have said that.
Well, let's be glad you're not writing it.
Yeah.
But Jarvis gives her a pep talk, saying that you still have purpose and you did what was needed to do. Peggy has the inert device and says, well, we can't exactly bring this into SSR headquarters to have it analyzed, but Jarvis may know someone who can help them analyze the weapon. So over at Stark Industries, we have Anton Vanko looking at the weapon. Now, if you remember, back in Iron Man 2, Anton Vanko is the father of Ivan Vanko, a.k.a. Whiplash, the villain played by Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, nobody remembers him, except in a bad way.
The whole backstory of him is that his father worked for Stark back in the, I guess, 50s and 60s, and then tried to steal a bunch of his technology, or steal a bunch of his plans, and was exiled to Russia. So here we have him before that, where he's seemingly a happy Stark employee.
Indeed.
So he's analyzing the weapon. He says that there's only 2 refineries who are capable of making such a thing. 2 of them closed during the war, so that leaves Roxxon. And Roxxon is apparently too big to search. It's like 2 miles wide. But we find out that while the weapon is not volatile, it is still active and is emitting low levels of Vita radiation, which, we'll find out that Peggy knows a little bit about Vita radiation.
Yes, basically the threat isn't over, even though they got this one thing.
Mm-hmm. So Peggy goes back to SSR headquarters to find the Project Rebirth file, which is I think this is the first time we've actually seen it called Project Rebirth, but it's the super soldier serum used on Captain America because it used Vita rays. You had the serum and then you also had the Vita rays.
It has never been replicated, that combination.
That's actually true, yeah. Every other time we've seen it, it's always just been the injection, not the Vita rays.
That's right.
So we have another flashback of the Cap putting the plane down into the water, and Sousa comes across Peggy while she's looking at the photo of Steve. He tries to back out silently, but he makes a noise. He tells Peggy about a story about when he got hit and injured in the war with his leg. And after he leaves, at the bottom of the box, there is a Vita ray gauge, which can detect Vita radiation. So we next go over to where the suspicious guy, the assassin from earlier, who I've referred to in my notes as the Silent Man.
Isn't he also like super Aryan looking?
He could be, yeah.
I seem to remember that, yeah.
He's putting together a typewriter that's connected to a radio. It acts as a communication device. He asks for permission to terminate Agent Carter and gets a reply of, yes, you must complete the mission at all costs.
Yeah, it was like, I wanted to say get Carter, like those commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the typewriter that types itself. I thought that was a cool image.
Yeah, that's cool. So over at Roxxon, Peggy and Jarvis are there, and they'll see that the facility is well guarded for someplace that's supposedly abandoned. So Peggy goes in alone, and Jarvis stays in the car. I like how she climbs the electric fence, and she has, rubber gloves on, but you can still see the sparks from the electricity.
Nice detail.
She uses the Vita ray meter to find where all the manufacturing is going on. She runs into a guard and takes him down, and sees 2 lab techs working on, creating more of the weapon. One of whom is Brannis, the seller from earlier. And as they're, talking about the weapon, or at least one of them is talking and Brannis is just silent, Outside, Jarvis sees a truck that's entering Roxxon, and he radios Peggy to tell him know that she's going to have some company. But as she does this, this is one of those things where it's like, all right, they clearly haven't. I like this because the lab techs overhear the radio.
Yeah, it's the 1940s equivalent of when the hero forgets to put his phone on silent mode, and then somebody calls him.
Yeah.
Which again, I think that also happened in Alias. Oh wait, no, it happened in the other direction. Never mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, the lab tech who can actually talk goes to investigate, whereas Brannis takes the weapon and she uses some sort of gadget to blind the lab tech while Brannis runs.
Yeah, the Men in Black flasher.
Peggy chases Tim when he gets to a truck that's full of weapons,
full of those explosives.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just any weapon.
That's what I say. I only refer to it in my notes as the weapon, so I said full of
the holy hand
weapons.
Grenade.
Yeah. And it turns out he's got the same scar on his neck as the Silent Man, but he puts on or uses an electrolarynx on his throat to talk.
This was great. This is such a classic comic book thing where you give the villain one little thing that's very memorable. They don't need some kind of crazy costume or a code name or anything like that. You just have one distinctive thing and you remember them forever.
And so she asks him about the Silent Man who has the same scar as him. He says that's not his friend, and if he's here, we're both dead anyways. He says Leviathan is coming, and he throws one of the explosives down. He says, "You got 30 seconds." So
yeah, there's kind of a fake looking smoke effect as it's going off, but okay.
Yeah. So Peggy calls Jarvis, says they've got 20 seconds. So he drives into the facility. He's being shot at. Peggy jumps onto the roof, gets in as the car still going. The weapon goes off behind them, and he's like, Jarvis is flooring it, but they're still not moving it, that fast because of the implosion that's going on. And the bumper is torn off of the car, and the whole facility implodes.
Well, does it implode or does it explode?
It explodes, then implodes. No, it implodes.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now. Very nice. Like in Poltergeist. It seemed like Jarvis had a pretty good time. He's like, woohoo!
Yeah. So we go back to SSR headquarters. Sousa's talking with Chief Dooley when Thompson interrupts him. He says that the bouncer from the club saw a blonde who attacked him. And they talk to the club photographer who thinks that he's got a shot of the blonde.
Right.
As this is going on, Sousa gets a call and says that Roxxon blew up. And so they've got to go investigate that. Back at the automat, Jarvis and Peggy are back to back again. Peggy reveals what she heard about Leviathan. Jarvis says he'll check Howard's files. And Peggy is writing down the address of the dairy farm on the bottle of milk that she has. Do you know why?
Because she wants to get it from the source?
No, because the truck that had all of the explosives in it was from the same dairy farm.
Oh, and they couldn't have just stolen it?
No.
It must be connected.
They could have, but also, it's a lead. Come on.
A lead is a lead, yeah. I gotta say, I was like, do we need another evil organization?
I knew you were gonna say that.
It would be one thing if this were just another show like Alias or whatever, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. just did that. Right?
Yes, but we'll hear more about it later.
I mean, I'm not going to watch the whole show, so it didn't bother me too much. But
no, I meant next episode.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I don't mind one episode.
I'm just saying, I knew you were going to say that, but you know what? It's not yet another, and I'll talk more about it next episode.
All right.
Anyway, so as she's writing down the address of the dairy farm, there's a regular at the automat who's being a jerk to Angie, slaps her ass as she walks away.
Yep.
And at that point, Peggy decides she's going to threaten him. You know,
And threaten him she does. It's like the
yes.
level of violence is extreme.
Is it though?
My note here is threatens a hero who fought for his country. Like, he may
That
be a
doesn't give him
jerk,
any.
but he's also a vet.
Yes, but does being a vet allow you that to be a jerk to anyone you want to? No.
No, but I'm just telling the truth. He is one.
And he's also an asshole.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. Do you feel like the level of violence inflicted against this guy was justified?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Look,
well, she really doesn't mess around.
Okay, when you're saying level of violence, she takes a fork and puts it into his side. It's not like she's,
She says, I'm about 2 seconds of pushing away from, like, entering your heart or something like that. She basically threatens to kill him. Really quick, it reminded me of Superman 2, when a guy is kind of a jerk to Clark Kent, and Clark Kent responds, or maybe it was Man of Steel, where he responds by taking the guy's...
Superman 2. Oh, no, that's Man of Steel.
Takes the guy's truck and puts it in a tree.
See, that is extreme. What Clark does in Superman 2, where he just spins the guy around really fast in the diner, that I was like, all right, that was justified. And I think this is that level. Yeah, she didn't actually hurt him.
Yeah, but he definitely was scared enough that he was going to get out of there.
Yeah.
And it's not like he tipped well, so it's not like her friend is losing out on anything.
Yeah. Out in the street, Jarvis is in a car watching Peggy as she leaves, and he's talking to Howard Stark on the phone. Says that Peggy will never suspect.
Oh my god. More machinations. Stark just can't help himself.
And with that, our episode ends.
All right, so now it's time for Spy Fact versus Fiction. Would you like me to go first?
Sure, what do you got?
Okay, so there's a part where they mention a red ball.
Ah, you got that.
or do you want to do
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
So there's a couple origins, according to Wikipedia. One origin is that it's by the U.S. Air Force to identify aircraft maintenance issues.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more likely they used it as from Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets, which is a book that I read most of. It's 600 pages. I didn't read all of it. But the red ball is used to describe a high-profile police case that draws media and political attention, and therefore is given a high priority.
All right. So I'm just going to minor correct
you.
So it's not exactly, it's not necessarily from Homicide: A Year on the Killing Streets. It was featured in that book, but that's not where it originated from.
Okay.
But I will say that when I heard that, what I immediately thought of was its use in Minority Report, where a red ball means a premeditated murder.
Okay, so it goes around. Yeah, it's going around in a circle. Like, Minority Report probably got that from Homicide.
It definitely did, yeah. From real life, police cases. But then it changed into its whole different thing. But I thought of that first. But yeah, so it was interesting to me that I was like, wait, a red ball? Are they making a Minority Report reference? But no, it's a real thing, which is interesting. I didn't know it. All right, you have anything else?
Yeah. So the other thing I have is the whole thing about Stark selling military hardware. So first I was like, okay, so military hardware, where did it end up after World War II? Because I know Israel got some, Czechoslovakia got some, but that was too big. So what I looked up instead was Henry Ford. All right.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
I knew that Henry Ford didn't like Jews very much, but it's actually worse than that.
Oh no.
Oh, that's true. It's actually worse than that. So my two articles are medium.com. Henry Ford actually aided the Nazis as much as he could. And Factual with a PH, like fat, like factual, 8 American companies that worked with the Nazis during World War II. So on his 75th birthday in 1938, Henry Ford was awarded the Grand Cross of the Order of the German Eagle by the National Socialist German Workers' Party, also known as the Nazi Party. Ford and his business constructed for both sides through the Nazi Party's ascent to power and also the war itself. Now, Ford didn't make weapons per se, but he did make cars. Say hello to Ford and General Motors. Hitler was so impressed with Henry Ford, he hung a picture of Henry Ford on his office wall. While Germans throughout the world, or throughout the country, had pictures of Hitler, Hitler had a picture of Ford. So Ford had a facility in a place in Germany called Köln, spelled K-O with an umlaut L-N. I don't know how you would say that. Köln, whatever. In the 1930s, he continued to make and sell cars with Russian slave labor for both American and Germans during World War II. When the USSR government prohibited Ford from purchasing simple German ingredients, he countered by importing supplies from across Germany in return for German parts. So basically, yeah, that was kind of shitty.
Yeah.
That's all I have for Spy Fact versus Fiction.
All right, so I've got a few things. So we've got the SSR, the Strategic Scientific Reserve, which seems to be based on the Office of Strategic Services, which we've talked about before, right?
Oh, yeah, a bunch of times with Catcher Was a Spy,
Yeah.
at least other ones
At
too.
least the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But just a reminder that was this from Wikipedia. The OSS is the Office of Strategic Services. Was the intelligence agency of the U.S. during World War II, which later was dissolved and was succeeded by the CIA. All right, so I've got something about the electrolarynx, which is what the what is his
The
name?
bad guy. I should have suspected when you knew what it was that you had something about it.
Brannis is his name. So this is from Wikipedia. It's an electrolarynx, sometimes referred to as a throat back, is a medical device about the size of a small electric razor used to produce clearer speech by those who have lost their voice box, usually due to cancer of the larynx. The most common device is a handheld battery-operated device pressed against the skin under the mandible, which produces vibrations to allow speech.
Which is basically what happened in the episode.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
close enough to
yeah.
it.
Yeah, so usually it's used for throat cancer, but in this case, it seems like it was an elective process, given that they had the identical scars.
Yeah, and they're bad guys.
Yeah. So lastly, I've got something from Jonah Mendez, former chief of disguise at the CIA. Now, this is from Spyscape's website, which has Mendez's top 10 CIA disguise tips. I won't read all of them, but I'll read the ones that are relevant to Peggy's disguise at the Martinique Club.
Mm-hmm.
So, number one, blend in if you don't want to be noticed. If you have time, buy local clothing. So here she's, blending in. If she just came dressed as, her usual agent attire, she would stand out. Whereas if she's just another, woman dressed fancily, she blends in.
Yeah, stand out versus blend in is kind of relative, right? Like that guy certainly noticed her.
Yeah, but I'm sure he noticed any girl who came in with, a low cut dress. But,
That's true.
and also, is he really thinking about her face at that moment?
No comment.
All right. So, number two, change your hair. If you can't color it or wear a wig, change of style may help change your appearance. Number five, makeup. Makeup can be a game changer for men or women who want to smooth out a rough complexion. I'm going to skip past to number 10. Own it. Just as important as your disguise is your demeanor. Stride in like you own the room and the character. So I think, and I won't presume to speak for Jonah Mendez, but at least judging from these top 10 tips, I think she does a pretty good job in sort of disguising herself and not making herself, obvious and to other people.
Walk in like you own it is just good advice for life.
All right, let's go to our favorite quotes. What have you got?
Actually, why don't you go first? Because I have one I want to get into a little bit.
All right. So I've got the end of her threatening speech to the automat patron.
To the vet?
Yeah. To the asshole.
Okay.
Just because he's a vet doesn't excuse being an asshole. Oh, and one more thing. Tip generously. And actually, my other quote is in reference to him as well, where Peggy says, "Is he a regular?" And Andrew says, "Yeah, but a regular what? I'm not allowed to say that on the clock."
That was a very 1940. You got to say that with the transatlantic accent. But a regular what? I'll tell you off the clock or whatever. I'm not allowed to say on the clock.
All right. What do you got?
I think you know what I was going for. So yeah, so there's some funny ones, but I'm going to do more of the serious ones.
Okay.
I like the one where is it Sousa is the guy's name? Daniel says, "Well, unfortunately, I can't find my leg anywhere," and Peggy says, "You're one of the lucky ones." In response. Mm-hmm. And then later she says to Jarvis, "If we live, I'll tell you all about it." Mm-hmm. But so my favorite part of both of these episodes My favorite part
Okay.
was when someone, I think it's Thompson, says to Carter, I guess being Captain America's liaison, in quotation marks, has its
Mm-hmm.
advantages.
Yep.
And I really liked that because
Okay.
even though it's kind of a fucked up thing to say, it's
Kind of.
very
It's an
interesting.
extremely fucked up thing to say.
Okay, yeah, all right, fine. I agree. It's an extremely fucked up thing to say, but I really like how there's like a meta thing going on where like it makes you wonder like how many people knew that she was with Captain America and like what's the nature of her job. And also I like that's the thing that they've done in other series where it's like you have the hero and then you have the people that get caught in the hero's wake as the hero just barrels through the world, right? So it like maybe for us watching the audience or us in the audience, Peggy is just the love interest in one single Captain America movie. But for her being with Captain America not for that long has ramifications for her whole life. Not
Mm-hmm.
only for the way she feels, but the way other people interact with her. So I
Right.
thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting for just a single line.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't necessarily agree that's the best part of all these episodes, but okay.
Well, what I consider to be the best part is the part that makes me like think, like make me like wake up and be like, oh, I never really thought of that before. That's different. As opposed
Hmm.
to like, I don't know, she punches a guy, I've seen that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
But something that
I
makes me
mean, I
think
guess
is
because I've
is
seen
that's
this
what I
series
consider to be
before, I like that
uh-huh.
doesn't it didn't strike me as anything new because I clearly got that just because I've seen the series before.
Yeah. I also feel like something like that has also happened to Lois Lane. So like, do you know those
Hmm.
comics, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, the ones from like back in like the 60s or whatever?
50s, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Whatever
Hmm.
50s. That's what this reminded me of, where it's like Superman and
Oh,
Captain America. Sorry.
go ahead, go on.
So this part reminded me of that because like Superman and Captain America cast these huge shadows, and it's very difficult for the people around them, like Lois Lane, and I guess like Agent Carter too, to get out from under those shadows and establish themselves as their own people, not just Captain America's girlfriend or Superman's girlfriend,
What I will say though about those comics
right?
is usually comics are usually terrible about, and oh, I don't know what I'm going to wear on a date with Superman, which was no is not the best portrayal of Lois, and there's much better portrayals of Lois out there.
Dude, if you think that's the worst Lois Lane comic, there are way worse
I'm
ones than that.
oh no, I'm let's not get into this,
You're
but there's
familiar? All right.
yeah, I'm just
All right,
saying
so
that I'm just as an example. Anyway, so should we get to our ratings?
yes, for this episode, No Time to Die or whatever it was called. So we rated on a scale of
No,
1 to 10
no
martinis.
time to die. The
One,
episode
it's
is
called like,
called "Now Is Not the End."
oh, okay.
Just for the record, it is not
Okay, so
called "No Time to Die."
so our rating is a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being Avengers 1997 and 10 being even better than Taken or No Time to Die or Burn Notice. How would we rate episode 1 of Agent Carter? I can go
I'm very
first.
curious. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I really liked the pilot of Agents of Shield or the beginning of Agents of Shield. This
Hmm.
one, I don't know, it just didn't do that much for me. Like it's not bad. It had interesting stuff, but like her being in disguise, her stealing the stuff, her infiltrating a factory and then the factory blows up. It's I don't know. We've just seen that before. And maybe I'm getting jaded. I know I
Yes.
probably shouldn't be, but it is how I feel. It's kind of like, meh, it's okay. I will give it a 6 out of 10.
Oof. All right. I am going to give this. Well, I mean, I like this show. I like this character first of all. Like, even just in
Mhm.
Captain America: The First Avenger, I liked this character. So I liked getting to see more of her. I liked getting to see more of her as just her own character and not outside of Captain America's shadow. Yes, I mean she's still in the shadow of him, but we got to see who she is without him. And
Right.
yes, we may have seen some of these things before, but every spy show is going to have disguises and fights and infiltrating a building. So just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing or a trope. Not all tropes are bad things. And getting more time with this character, I thought was great, and I really enjoy this character. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Well, that is a big draw of the MCU. Is even if the plots aren't exactly anything to write home about, it's the characters that you love and love spending time with. is what always brings people back.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to our second episode that we're going to be covering?
Yeah, so our second episode is called The Iron Ceiling. And is that supposed to be a reference to the glass ceiling?
Glass ceiling and iron curtain. Yeah, probably.
Oh, a combination of both. All right. So the description on IMDb is Carter finally gets a chance to prove herself as she is sent on a mission in Russia with Agent Thompson and the Howling Commandos. Meanwhile, Agent Sousa makes an important discovery.
Yeah, so we got a little recap from basically what's happened between episodes, the first episode and this episode. One thing that's not sort of mentioned in that recap is that Peggy moved into Angie's building and she meets Dorothy Underwood, who is a new resident in the building as well. We see her kill a guy.
Mm-hmm.
We also find out that apparently one of the things that Stark was guarding was Steve Rogers' blood, and also the photos from the club, from the club photographer. None of them show her face. We do see, her back. And also, Chief Dooley now has the typewriter of the silent guy.
Yeah. So Dorothy, or Dottie Underwood, as I think she introduces herself, is played by Bridget Regan, who is in a ton of stuff on IMDb. Okay. But I know her from a show that was the same time slot and level of production values as Jack of All Trades, a show we covered recently. And that show was called Legend of the Seeker, and it was based on the Sword of Truth books by Terry Goodkind. And Bridget Regan played the Confessor Kaylin, which is a woman with a mysterious past and a really powerful superpower.
Okay. I've heard the title Legends, but I had no idea what it was about. Okay. Anyways, so we start in Russia, 1937. Where there's a bunch of girls handcuffed to their cots.
Yeah, and immediately, I assume everyone in the audience is like, oh, is this a Black Widow origin? They don't say it in the episode, at least not this one.
But yeah, so they get uncuffed from their cots. We see one of them has stolen a piece of bread, gives some to another girl. They're watching Snow White and practicing their English or their American accents. Which reminded me, there is a scene in the opening credits of Black Widow where all of the Red Room trainees are watching American cartoons to practice their English.
Wow, I did not remember that. That was the 2018 Black Widow?
Yes, it is.
Or whatever. 2021 Black Widow?
2020?
Yeah, I thought it would have been, I thought it would have been Snow White. Maybe they just forgot that they had Snow White and Agent Carter, or maybe they didn't want to make it as obvious.
Well, I mean, we'll get to it later. So they also have fight training against each other. The one who gave the girl the piece of bread, and gets the upper hand, and the other one in a chokehold, and then with the nod of the instructor, kills the other girl.
I guess they're not that good friends, or more. It's like, just that far along.
Yep. And then Dottie wakes up in her room and starts doing some sit-ups. So Dottie is having a meal with Peggy in the automat. She's eating bread and gives half to Peggy, which clues you in that she was that little girl.
Right.
She's new in New York City, so she wants charting out all the tourist destinations in NYC that she wants to see. Peggy is distracted. She finds Jarvis's card in her purse and tears it up. Peggy says that you should get to know the people first rather than seeing all the tourist traps, and she recommends starting in Brooklyn.
Yeah, apparently, Dottie, what you need to do is just go to Brooklyn and hang around. I guess. Yeah, something you didn't mention in the recap is that apparently her and the Starks are not getting along.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
By the way, fun little drinking game for this. Take a shot every time someone says Stark. You'll be dead halfway through the episode.
Yeah. So Dottie knocks over Peggy's bag and picks it up. Apologizes. Peggy leaves, but it's revealed that Dottie took her keys.
Yes.
So Peggy is outside of the newsstand, is getting a newspaper. Jarvis finds her at the newsstand. He's apologizing for not telling her about Steve's blood, but Peggy is not having any of it. Jarvis admits that Howard has flaws, but he's a good man. But Peggy says, nope, he used me, and Jarvis counters, well, the SSR uses you too.
Yeah, great comeback, Jarvis. Not really.
Back in the SSR office, all hands are on deck. Sasha Demonov, that's the name of the silent man, his typewriter turned on, and there's an encoded message. And they brought in a cryptographer to decode the message. And we overhear him talking to Chief Dooley, says it's not German or else the Turing method wouldn't work. Except I don't see a giant bomb machine anywhere there to decode it.
Yeah, they must have it in the basement. But it is nice to have that shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, but the cryptographer can't make heads or tails of the message. Peggy seizes it, recognizes it's a one-time pad system.
Yeah,
Which
we know them.
we talked about. I still don't remember a one-time pad being mentioned at all in Jack Ryan.
It was. Take my word
Okay,
for it.
all right. I will look for that because I do not remember that at all. Anyways, she recognizes it's a one-time pad, and the cryptographer's like, "You don't think I would have tried a pad first off?" And she says, "Well, did you account for the original message being in Russian?" Okay, here's my problem with this.
Oh, you finally found something you don't like?
Hey, if there's a legitimate problem, I will point it out.
Yeah.
A one-time pad, there's no way you can just see something. You can recognize it's potentially a one-time pad, but there's no way you can decrypt it because it is literally randomized, and it's in the name, one-time pad, as in one pad. You rip it off and use the next one the next day, and you never use that one again.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's stupid that a professional cryptographer wouldn't think to translate it from Russian.
Oh, no, that, I mean, he doesn't know necessarily where it's coming from, although Demidov, that's very Russian. Also, yes, now that I think about it, yes. But and I get that they're trying to be clever with, referencing, Bletchley Park and Turing, but a one-time pad, yes, it's possible to decrypt it, but you wouldn't be able to recognize it and decrypt it just like that.
Yeah, I feel like probably somebody back then just looked up cryptographer, spy, communications, and one-time pad came up, and they were like, "We'll just use that. Put it in the script."
Yeah. Like, no, I appreciate that what they're trying to go for here, but it didn't make sense for what a one-time pad actually is, how they actually work. I mean, they seem to have done the work at least because it did look like how you would have the 5-letter blocks for a one-time pad, but that's not how they work.
The writing didn't hold together.
Yeah. Anyway, so she decodes it, finds out that they're map coordinates, and also it says purchase confirmed, exchange at 0800, April 27th. Apparently the coordinates are for the Marina Harka forest in Belarus. And the next line of the decryption is Leviathan to acquire prototype Havoc reactor. And Chief Dooley reveals that Leviathan is a covert Russian organization. Supposedly they wanted to purchase weapons to fight the Allies after the war.
Mm-hmm.
The next line says payment of $100,000 to Howard Stark.
Wow, they just name drop him there. That's so convenient.
So Dooley wants Thompson and his crew to go to Russia, and Peggy says, I helped decode this, I should go too.
Right.
So Dooley sees both of them in his office. Peggy says they need a code breaker, and Thompson counters, I don't want to have to act as a babysitter for you.
Right.
And Dooley says that, put yourself in my shoes. If you get killed or someone else gets killed, it falls on my head. And Peggy says, I know this terrain. I've been there. I've been in the trenches there. Or the only people who know this better than me is 107th. And Dooley's like, well, there's no way you can get the 107th. He's like, what if I could? And it's like, well, then I'd say pack your bags, but that's not going to happen.
This part was great. It was so funny.
So she leaves, goes, makes a call, and as they're making a call, Thompson talks to Dooley and is like, we'll plan on meeting to the Polish side of the border, and I think that's the best way. And as soon as he says that, she comes back and says, the 107th will meet us on the Polish side of the Russian border. That is the best plan for that, right? Isn't it? Dooley's like, all right, fine, gear up. Yeah,
so that part was great. It is kind of funny. They're like, we'll meet you on the Polish side. That's like hundreds of miles long, but whatever. I'm not going to nitpick for once. I also like the boss says, I don't want to get a woman killed, which I appreciated. I thought that felt very real to the times.
Okay.
It felt very authentic. And a good reason, as opposed to just, I don't like her because she's a woman. I'm a stereotype. Know what I mean?
It's a fine line between the two.
That's fair. And then I also like, again, from the boss, when he says, listen, Thompson, this little crush of yours on Carter is starting to get kind of old. And Thompson's like, what are you talking about? He gets all defensive. I really didn't think he was like, I didn't think he had a crush on Carter until that moment.
Yeah. So Peggy is outside of the men's locker room and needs to change, because apparently the women's restroom is downstairs in the ad agency, which is a cover, and she decides she'd rather change in there than having to go all the way down, put combat clothes on in the women's restroom and have to explain that.
Yeah, which is, again, this whole thing is very authentic. It all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
So she goes off to a separate section. The men are resistant to her coming along. Sousa brings in some intel for them, and Thompson tricks Sousa into going over to where Peggy is changing.
Yeah, she's practically naked by 1940 standards, which is to say she's wearing a very long dress that would not look out of place in a casino these days.
Yeah.
Around here, she also gets a mithril vest.
Yes. But what Sousa does actually catch a glimpse of is Peggy's shoulder and two distinctive looking scars there.
Was that from the movie?
What?
Did she get the scars? You want to know how I got these scars? Did she get the
No.
scars in the movie?
Uh-uh.
Is it ever explained where she got them from?
We'll see.
Okay. I mean, like, I assume it's just in some other episode. I was just curious.
No, it's not explained there, but it is explained in her file later. And we'll get to that.
All right.
So in a plane heading to the drop point, we find out they're going to be parachuting out of the plane. Thompson is nervous. He's apparently done 8 training jumps, but no real combat jumps. Whereas Peggy, has done this a bunch of times.
Okay, so this is the second Aliens reference. I don't know if they meant to do this. I'm going to use up one of my favorite lines. There's a part where Carter says, "I'm just not used to serving with boys." So this, of course, reminded me of the famous exchange in Aliens where Hudson says to Vasquez, "Hey, Vasquez, you ever been mistaken for a man?" She says, "No, how about you?" Classic line. But then also, the Lieutenant Gorman says in Aliens, "I've done 3 combat jumps. Pause, simulated." So the idea is like he doesn't know what he's doing either. Mm-hmm. So maybe someone who wrote this episode is a fan. Also, Carter looks really good in that helmet. I must say.
I like that outfit. Yeah. I'm sad that they ditched the helmets afterwards after they land.
Yeah, that would have been good. But have you ever worn a World War II helmet? They're heavy.
I mean, I've got a costume one for my World War II Captain America costume.
Is it heavy?
Which is it is heavy. But, I mean, I assume a real helmet is even heavier.
Yeah. You're talking about we're not the greatest generation. Like, I can barely wear the helmet for 5 minutes before my neck starts to hurt.
Anyway, so they land, they hide their parachutes, and they quickly find the Howling Commandos, including Dum Dum Dugan, who forgot the password, which is not emu or ostrich, it's eagle. So I assumed you enjoyed having, what's-his-face show up here?
It's Neil McDonough, not what's-his-face. Yeah, it was great to have him back, but I was just reminded of how Dum Dum Dugan is like not a character. Like that hat and his mustache is like his entire character.
Does he need more character than that?
I'm saying Neil McDonough's acting knife was blunted on this script. But it's still nice to see him.
Yeah. So Peggy introduces everyone, and I think Dum Dum is the only one who's actually from the movies. All the rest are like new characters. Although all characters from the Howling Commandos from the comics.
Right.
So Thompson suggests they get moving and start going east to the border, whereas Dum Dum says, you're going to run into a wall of Reds before you reach the border. Let's go up through Lithuania, and let's take these 2 trucks that we have rather than walk.
Yeah, so already bringing them along was a good decision.
Mm-hmm. Peggy is in a truck with Dugan. She brought a bottle of bourbon for him. Dugan wants to know the story between Stark and Leviathan. Peggy says that she knows that Howard isn't selling to them and thinks it's all a trap. And also they, both miss Steve.
Yep. Take a couple shots there for the mention of Stark.
So back at SSR, Sousa is, still there. It's late at night. And so is Chief Dooley. Dooley is going to have a drink with a friend. So once he leaves, Sousa gets Peggy's file and sees the 2 gunshots in her shoulder in the file, except it's backwards.
Oh, the picture is like flipped or something?
Well, so presumably, I don't know, this is just me, you would think that because they don't have a photograph of her body with all the scars. What they have is like a dummy drawing with like just a default body, and then X is where she has different scars.
Right.
Now, you'd presume they'd be looking face on at you. So, in her file, it shows the 2 gunshot wounds being on the left shoulder.
Oh, that's a great observation. I did not notice that. That's really funny.
But I think the reason they did it that way is because when you see the photo, it's on. You're looking at her back from her back, and so you see them in the right shoulder. But if it's flipped, so for the audience, it's like, all right, I see two bullet holes on that side, and 2 gunshot wounds on that side. But it
Mhm.
really should be flipped around the other way.
Yes, to be correct.
Yeah. But so he compares where the wounds are to the photos of the blonde woman from the Martinique and his memory of where Peggy's scars were, and they all match. And now he has to
He
decide what
figures
he's
it
going to
out.
do with that information.
Mhm.
Back in the Eastern Bloc, Peggy and the Howling Commandos and the SSR are around a campfire, trading stories about their service. Something about a Yeti and an abominable snowman.
Yeah, did that remind you of anything?
No?
So do you remember all the way back in Sea Stories when Admiral
Oh.
McRaven encountered the spirits of the people up in the northern Canada?
Oh,
And
right,
people
yeah.
thought it was like a Sasquatch type thing. But yeah, so we see a side of Thompson that Carter like respects. She's like, wow, maybe
Yeah.
he's not like a sexist dick all the time.
Yeah.
So
Apparently Thompson has a Navy Cross, and so he tells a story. It's 1945, Sukin Island. Thompson fell asleep on a night shift and woke up and found 3 Japanese soldiers walking to the camp. One is bending down over a sleeping CO, and he shoots all of them before anyone wakes up.
oh, there was 3. I
And
thought it
before
was like
they,
7. I
it's 6.
misremembered.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also before any of them realized he was there. And yeah, like you said,
Mm.
Peggy sort of has a new appreciation for Thompson after hearing that story.
After hearing that he killed a fellow human being.
Well, it's more that, he was able to actually take them all down, and that he saved his entire camp, I think, is more
Yeah, no, I
important.
mean, like, he reacted under pressure and did what he had to do. No, I get it. I'm
Yeah.
just being difficult. That's what I do here.
What else is new? Chief Dooley is at the bar with his friend.
His friend John Glover.
Yes, I know who you're going to bring this.
Yeah, I guess
I
Star
presume,
Extravaganza.
I presume we've seen him in another episode, but I don't actually remember.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But he's asking about the Battle of Finau. Apparently, in this battle, there's 247 Russians who were massacred, but no one will take credit for it. We find out that John Glover is a writer, and he wrote a piece about it for the Times that got buried because it implicated the army and Stark in a Russian cover-up.
Stark shot.
Apparently, Stark was there for the cleanup. General McGinnis was the person in charge of cleanup, who apparently died of a heart attack a month ago. And in the story, Stark punched McGinnis, and McGinnis wiped the floor with him, but resigned a week later. And then a week after that, Stark walked away from a 7-figure R&D contract with the army and cut all ties. So John Glover thinks that, they don't have the whole story, but isn't sure what the truth really is.
Hey, you know what I really wanted to see in my Agent Carter show? Long conversations with people talking about Howard Stark who isn't even there. Which it probably wouldn't have bothered me so much, except we just had one. It's like enough already with these talking about Stark. I know I like to joke about the shots, but it's like, this is an Agent Carter show, not a Howard Stark show.
Anyway, so back in Russia, Thompson is looking at the facility through some binoculars, says that, we should break in groups, no weapons discharged unless absolutely necessary. So they, team up into 2 teams of 4.
Yeah, for some reason they mix the teams. They have SSR guys, but why? The Howling Commanders are used to working with each other.
Yeah, but
it's like, did they get bored and they just wanted to hang out with somebody else for a change?
It's acknowledged that they are the best there is. So wouldn't you want to have the best there is in both groups, and not just one group be the best and the other be not combat ready?
That would have been funny if they had been like, we Howling Commanders are the best. And they're like, no, we're the best. And then they like argue about it. That's what I would have done.
No, again, let us be glad you're not.
All right.
But no, I mean, yeah, we everyone is in awe and reverence of the Howling Commandos. So of course they would want them in both groups.
Okay, yeah. I was just wondering about that. That's fine.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so the group with Peggy and Dugan find a classroom. They accidentally turn on a projector. And so here, yeah, it's not just Snow White that they're using. They use other cartoons as well.
Yeah, no, I never thought otherwise. But yeah, I like this part. It was very creepy. Yeah. Very unsettling. Yeah. Nice to see it.
And also, there's actually embedded messages in the film in Russian, which says, was it inflict fear? I think was what it said
obey.
in Russian.
Yeah.
And they also hear a little kid crying somewhere. So they go to investigate. and they find children's beds with handcuffs on them. And Dum Dum finds the crying kid and approaches her and says, we're here to help. And she's like pointing at his hand and distracts Dum Dum and then stabs him.
And then kills a howling commando.
Yeah, she steals his gun, shoots one of the commandos.
And she gets away with it. Like, they don't bring her to justice in this episode. Probably never.
Nope. Yeah, she escapes through a vent.
So scary.
Howling Commando, I don't remember which one it is, but it is in the comics. This is the notable for, I'm trying to remember which one he is, but he's the notable for being the first one who actually dies in the comic too. And like a good example of, of averting comic book death, where he actually is dead and stays dead.
Yeah, he's not important enough to be brought back.
But yeah, so the other group finds them and says, what happened? Oh, there was a kid, and all right, everyone stay on your toes.
Yeah.
Back in New York, Dooley finds Jarvis in the street and tries to ask him about General McGinnis. Jarvis claims to have never heard of him. Dooley tells him, I'm not a witch hunt. I'm just here to want to find out the truth, so tell your boss that. Back in Russia, they're making their way through the facility. They shoot a guard that they find and find a jail cell with 2 men in there. And we go back to New York, where Dottie is finally going into Peggy's room.
What do you mean, finally?
Well, it's been, since the beginning of the episode. And we haven't checked in with her since then.
Long enough to forget about it. Yeah.
But as she unlocks the door, she notices a string falling down. And apparently it was wrapped around the padlock.
Nice.
Which she notices and thinks, oh, that's very clever. Which reminded me of Dr. No, James Bond, putting his hair across the 2 doors.
Right, which of course is like in 1984 with the chalk, as we talked about at the time. I guess I don't remember that, but so no, this part, of course, that's fine. Did you remember? I think we talked about it before. The Spy Museum, where you have to put everything back the way you found it.
Yep.
And we were always really bad at it. We could never do it. Yeah,
I don't remember that we were bad at it.
Maybe you were good at it, but I was not good at
it. Yeah. Yeah, so she starts searching the room, checks the bed, books, clothing. She finds a false bottom in one of the drawers, and there's a jewelry box in there with photos of all of the bad babies. And she puts all of the photos, save for one, back.
Right.
She also sees the photo of Skinny Steve and like sits down at the vanity, and like Dottie, finds the Sweet Dreams lipstick, puts some on, starts pretending that she's Peggy, putting on an English accent. And then she, with that one photograph that she took, leaves and puts the string back on the padlock.
This is like Spy versus Spy stuff. Like the Mad cartoons.
So back in Russia, Peggy is talking to the people in the cell. Apparently Leviathan got some schematics that they didn't know how to build, and they wanted them to build it for them. Yeah. So one of them is an engineer and the other is his therapist. Apparently the engineer has some mental issues and the therapist provides the stability for him to actually get the work done.
Very cute that they were locked up together. Some free sessions.
So apparently the weapon is a photonic amplifier. It alters the behavior of the waves that make up light. And also Stark's not there. Apparently Leviathan stole the schematics and wouldn't need the engineer if Stark was actually there.
Wow, great. More conversations about Stark. I love them. Give me more.
Therapist hasn't heard any mention of Stark being there, which really cements home Peggy's theory that this is all a trap.
Right.
And one of the Howling Commandos who was on watch says, we're going to have company soon. So Peggy shoots the lock for them to escape. We have incoming Leviathan soldiers. They get backed into a corner when Peggy calls Dugan for an exit, when one of the SSR agents, Lee, gets shot in the head.
Oh no.
And then one of the other commandos gets shot in the leg, and the engineer grabs the commando and he tries to use him as leverage in exchange so he can leave with his life. And they're all trying to talk him down, saying, this is not the way to do it. If you want to leave, this is not how it's going to happen.
This part's pretty exciting, where it's like, oh my God, the bad guys are coming in, and a good guy betrays them. People are dying. Oh no.
And the therapist is trying to get through to the engineer. And when it looks like he is, the therapist shoots him.
The therapist shoots the engineer?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got a little mixed up as who was which.
Yeah, and as this is going on, Thompson is not returning fire, and he's freezing up, and he's looking very panicked over there.
But this is such a trope, too. Yeah.
And finally, Dugan provides an exit for them as he blows a hole through the wall and brings the backup.
Yeah.
And so they're all getting everyone outside through the door or through the hole. But Thompson is still frozen, so Peggy goes and gets him, and they all get away in the truck. And the SSR are boarding the plane to go back to the States. Dugan tries to convince Peggy to stay, but Peggy says, nope, I think it's time to put my days on the front lines behind me.
Yeah, so this would have been great if she had joined the Howling Commandos. That would have been a much different show, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But this made me wonder, what have the Howling Commandos been doing? Is it still 1946?
It is still 1946. So I guess they're just sort of cleaning up Europe.
I was joking with myself. Maybe they were overthrowing democratically elected governments in Central America.
They're not the CIA.
But the timeline's wrong for that.
But Peggy convinces a therapist to come with them to New York City to help the SSR combat Leviathan.
That would have been good too.
Yeah. Back on the plane, Thompson is brooding. Peggy goes over to him, and she's trying to comfort him, saying, everyone freezes. And he reveals that the Japanese soldiers that he shot when he got his Navy Cross were actually carrying a white flag. They were coming there to surrender, but he didn't realize until it was too late, and he buried the flag before anyone else saw. And he says that he's been trying to tell that story and since he came home from the war. It's
not just a crime, it's a cover-up. It's both. But yet, she still seems to like him, which is interesting.
Well, she
not only did he...
Okay.
What?
I don't know that she seems to like him, but she has sympathy for him, empathy for him. That doesn't just necessarily mean she's interested in him.
I felt like over the course of this episode, Carter's opinion of Thompson improved.
Yes. Sure.
Is that fair to say? Which is interesting because with this reveal, not only did he freeze up when the going got tough, he's also a liar and not a war hero, but mostly a liar. So you'd think, I guess I would have expected her reaction that to be more negative than it was.
Well, she's an empathetic...
empathy is good. Right. I don't know, whatever. I guess I'd be curious if there's more fallout later.
I would say she also understands being put in a difficult position as she is now with having to lie to the SSR to find out the truth of what's going on.
Oh, so she relates.
In a weird way, yes.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. Anyway, so we go back to Dottie in her room. She takes some handcuffs out of her nightstand, handcuffs herself to the bed, and comfortably goes to sleep.
For those of you who didn't pick up on it already, there's final confirmation that she, in fact, did go to the school.
Thompson is making a report to Dooley saying that Lee died honorably. There was no Stark there and no Leviathan. However, they did get intel from Dr. Ivchenko, that's the name of the therapist, on Leviathan's plans. Peggy says the doctor doesn't think that Stark is connected to Leviathan, whereas Thompson is still thinking that, he probably is. And they send the doctor in to go see Dooley. And as they're leaving Dooley's office, we see that Sousa's still there. He seemingly isn't sure what to do still and doesn't reveal to Peggy that he knows. Thompson invites Sousa to go out for a drink with, the men, but he declines. And then Thompson says, Peggy, why don't you come? I owe you a bourbon. And with that, our episode ends.
Yay, they're finally accepting her.
Yeah, seemingly.
Seemingly, for now.
All right. Do you have anything for spy fact versus spy fiction?
I do, but I seem to recall that it's your turn to go first, unless you want me to go first.
You can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so she has this whole speech where she's like, if you're in Belarusia and you smell herring, that means the wind has changed and you're about to freeze to death in 5 minutes, right? Do you remember this?
Yep.
So I looked it up. There doesn't seem to be any truth behind that. According to almanac.com, herring runs can predict the arrival of spring.
Okay.
But that's all you got. Now, also, his story about 3 Japanese soldiers surrendering. Now, the reputation of the Japanese army in World War II was that they never surrendered, famously. But I was like, well, is that really true, though? So, according to Wikipedia, during the Battle of Okinawa, famous battle, over 11,000 Japanese military personnel, including 3,000 unarmed laborers, surrendered between April and July 1945, representing 12% of the force deployed for the defense of the island, which is not exactly small. But many of these men were recently conscripted members of Boyate, home guard units who had not received the same indoctrination as regular army personnel, but also substantial numbers of Imperial Japanese Army soldiers also surrendered. Of course, that's towards the end of the war. But the point is, surrendering did happen.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. So I've got a couple things. First off, Leviathan, was also called the Leviathan Horde, is a fictional Soviet-based terror organization appearing in American comics published by Marvel Comics. Leviathan first appeared in Secret Warriors number 11, which came out in February of 2010. So unlike S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra, which first came out in the 60s, Leviathan is a much newer, organization, at least newer in terms of creation. It's in fictional history. It was created around the same time as S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra.
Yeah, they keep you guessing.
Yeah, it's not directly confirmed, but it's highly, theorized by a lot of Marvel fans that Leviathan is connected to the Red Room, so that would be a prototype Black Widow program. All right, so also the cryptographer who they bring in is said to be from Arlington Hall, which is like, that's interesting. I've never heard of that. So, according to Wikipedia, Arlington Hall, also called Arlington Hall Station, is a historic building in Arlington, Virginia, originally a girls' school and later the headquarters of the U.S. Army's Signal Intelligence Service cryptography effort during World War II.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and its site currently houses the George P. Shultz National Foreign Affairs Training Center and the Army National Guard's Herbert R. Temple Jr. Readiness Center. Apparently, during the World War II, Arlington Hall was in many respects similar to Bletchley Park in England, although Bletchley Park also covered Navy codes, and it's one of only 2 primary cryptography operations in Washington. The other was in the Naval Communications Annex.
All right. Well, wait. Oh, that's not different from the Naval Observatory.
That is different, yes. All right, so staying on this theme of the cryptographer, so longitude and latitude, they give very specific degrees. Which says 53 degrees and 72 minutes north, 27 degrees, 37 minutes west. So I looked up these coordinates, and it's the middle of the ocean.
Okay. That's just what they would want you to think.
Well, no. Let me get into it. First of all, minutes, when you measure, the way that longitude and latitude broken up, it's, I think it's, 180 degrees one way and 90 degrees I think, longitude is 180 degrees, latitude is 90 degrees. But when you're broken up at them, each degree is broken up in minutes. There's only 60 minutes in each degree. So you wouldn't say 72 minutes north. You would be 54 degrees and 12 minutes north. And so I looked that up. It's the middle of the ocean. However, if you change it from the latitude from west to east, it actually gets pretty close to Belarus. It's in Belarus. So they made a mistake there.
Okay.
So if you the latitude was right, I think the longitude was wrong.
It works on it.
Yeah. Lastly, the bowler hat. So the girl, what's his name? Dum Dum is rambling on. It's like, it's called a bowler hat because Peggy, why is it called a bowler hat? And this is according to the website of Lock and Co. Hatters, St. James Street, London, which is a very famous haberdasher. Or is that habit? No, I don't remember what the name of it.
Haberdashery, right? Yeah.
Name of a hatter. Yeah. So, the bowler was created by Lock & Co.'s chief hat maker, Thomas Bowler, hence why it's known as a bowler hat.
I
see. That's why. It's nothing to do with bowling, but yeah. And that's what I got for Spy Fact versus Spy Fiction.
All right, now it's time for our favorite quotes. I can go first.
Go ahead.
So I did, there were some pretty good funny, I'll do some funny ones. There's a part where I think Carter says, "Tell it to the Marines," which is like pure 1940s talk. I already mentioned the one about serving with boys. I like the part where they pause and then either Dum Dum Dugan or Carter says, "I miss him too." And it's like a quiet little moment. And then the therapist says, "He's not bad, he's burdened."
Is that your Russian accent?
Yeah, it's not very good. And then finally, Dugan says, "Wahoo!" And Carter says, "Stop wahooing and help."
Wahoo being the official battle cry of the Howling Commandos.
Is that true?
It is true.
Nice.
Let's see, because Army has its actual. I don't remember what all the various service branches, but they all have
hoorahs and oorahs and yada yada yada.
Exactly. So the Howling Commandos version is Wahoo. Yeah. All right, so I got one quote, and it's from the Arlington Hall cryptographer, who says, "Look, as difficult as it might be for you people to understand, I can't just beat a code into submission or shoot it with a gun."
Talking to them on their level. I appreciate that. Apparently, all you need to do is call Agent Carter. Get Carter. See it comes back.
There you go. Well, she did say that she was at Bletchley, so she would know a little bit about that.
All right, so now it is our ratings 1 to 10. I explained that already. Do you want me to go first again?
Sure.
Yeah, so this one was pretty good. Neil McDonough, great. John Glover, he's all right. all the conversations about Stark really got old. Also, but the girl was scary. They should have had her stop them from escaping rather than all of those goons with guns.
Well, yeah, that being said, in New York.
Yeah, that being said, it was fine. It was okay. I will give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, not a whole lot to dislike either, besides what I already said.
So I think I like this episode. I think I like the first episode more. I do enjoy sort of like the prototype Black Widow stuff and also the appearance of the Howling Commandos. And but it's more of like a war story than necessarily like a spy story. Like I think there's more spy action.
That's right.
In the first episode. So I'm going to give this a little bit less. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 for this one.
Okay. Another reason why I like this one was it had more contained amounts of Jarvis.
Like I like Jarvis.
I like him too, but his very, very British like C-3PO shtick gets kind of old. He's better in limited quantities.
All right, fair enough. Alrighty, well, and again, if you want to watch any episodes of this, I believe all episodes of Agent Carter are on Disney Plus, as well as the Marvel one-shot Agent Carter. And thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.